baseball.
In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
Here are your improbable hosts, Dean Millard and Jordan Blundell.
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. Get in the game where you own the game.
Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Full Count Fantasy Baseball, presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports and proudly broadcast on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. Just me on the show, doing this show and running a baseball team. Just becoming a little too tough for Jordan Blundell, as they are in the thick of a lot of things. So I don't think he'll be able to make the show anymore. Maybe as a guest every once in a while. But a little bit too busy with real life getting in the way of fantasy, which we always said is the cardinal sin. You should never, ever let real life get in the way of fantasy. But you're stuck with me, Dean Millard, and we are going to have a lot of fun. Speaking of Jordan, though, and myself, we're both going to be a part of Baseball Day in Canada. That's this Saturday. We are celebrating the great game with a day-long stream. I don't know all the details yet of where it's going to be broadcasting, but if you check out the Edmonton Prospects website or the Western Canadian Baseball League website, they will have all the details leading up to Saturday. But it's about a 10-hour stream. We're going to have different panels, a number of interviews that I've done for them, and a couple of ball games. The Prospects and Okadokes playing a doubleheader. So really looking forward to that celebration, and you'll be able to find out more about the Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball on that broadcast as well. But we always start out with a bit of a question of the day for everybody regarding baseball.
This is a serious message. Peace and love. Peace and love.
And the question we're going with today is Dodgers Phillies. In the early preview of a possible playoff matchup. So, Dodgers-Phillies, they're playing today. When you look at the early games, of course, there's a few other games because of so many makeups. You got the Nats and the Mets playing a doubleheader. They're just in the warm-up stages, getting going right away. You also have the Cards and the Pirates. As mentioned, the Dodgers and the Phillies, and the Athletics and the Indians. The only one out of these matchups in the early going that I could see being a playoff matchup is the Dodgers and the Phillies. And so, who do you take, the underdog or the perennial favorite and the defending champion? Chime in if you want. We'll tell you how to do that in just a second. But Dodgers-Phillies could be a playoff preview getting going very shortly. The Dodgers have gone through so much change in the lineup this year with the amount of injuries and now the trades that they've made. They have been grooving as of late, so we'll see. We'll talk a little bit more about the Dodgers when we look ahead to the weekend. But who do you got, the underdog, or do you take the favorite when it comes to a possible playoff preview between the Dodgers and the Phillies? The races this year are so interesting in Major League Baseball. And it's so neat because most of your guys, you're going to end the season with your players in fantasy just as they could be heating up down the playoff stretch. But if you get a franchise in the Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball, your team could play right until the end of the regular season. Then we have a playoff draft of all the franchises in fantasy that didn't make the playoffs, but their players in Major League Baseball are heading on to the playoffs. Then you have the exact same playoff. Wild card games, divisional series, conference championships, and then, of course, the big show. So we got all that, all those details coming out in the next little while that we'll tell you about. And big thanks to our title sponsor, Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. I was just describing our baseball league and what it's going to be like. It is easily the most realistic. It's the highest stakes fantasy platform out there. Whatever sport UFFS builds mimics nearly everything about the league it's based on. And we are going to have really, really big prize pools that are progressive, and they grow with every transaction. So, as I mentioned, Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball is on the way. The Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League is into its third off season now. We've had 2 champions already. UFAFL, American football, coming up this season. So it's growing, and it's awesome. And also, they're going to get actual Major League Baseball players involved. That is our goal, so you can have digital athlete NFTs of the actual players that are also fantasy assets. It's mind-blowing. It's awesome. It's on the Zilliqa blockchain, and you can find more info at www.uffsports.com. Get in the game where you own the game. All right, so this is what we do on this show. We have our headlines. We will have Baseball Thunderdome, a waiver wire wins, self-explanatory. Baseball Thunderdome, we pit 2 players together. You got to pick which one you would take. Sometimes we have stipulations, and this is for fantasy purposes. How do you spell relief? New segment. Now that Jordan's not on the show, I'm going to take over the reliever chat. We'll also have Prospect Peak and Rule Your League. So that is what we will be talking about today. And here's how you get in touch with us.
You talking to me? You talking to me? You talking to me? Well, who the hell else are you talking? You talking to me? Well, I'm the only one here.
Literally, I am the only one on the show now. So Duck Millard is where you can reach me on Twitter. You can also reach out to the Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball League on Twitter at UFLB_UFF Sports. You can email the show, fullcountfantasybaseball@gmail.com. And if you have a fantasy sports show that you think would fit great here on UFSN, shoot an email, ufsn@uffsports.com, and a couple of our websites for you as well, fullcountfantasybaseball.ca, listen to past episodes and more, and uffsports.com, where you can get in the game, where you own the game, and find out more information about the greatest fantasy league ever. All right, now let's get to some headlines. When you're looking at fantasy headlines, no bigger one than right now as it's fantasy league trade deadline time. In almost every fantasy league, they all end in the regular season and then play down. So our trade deadline is coming up this weekend in one of our leagues. And are you going all in? Are you loading up to win? Or adding a small piece here and there because you have the weapons, or maybe you're just adding one player to help you win some more prize money or go on a miraculous run, but you don't want to sell the farm. In one of my leagues, I'm leading the way, but I'm not going to make any moves, mostly because our commissioner, Jordan, didn't set up any draft picks for us to trade. So I'm thinking this is going to be the last year of this, what was supposed to be a dynasty league, if we're not having picks and things like that. But in my other long-term dynasty contract league, I'm near the bottom. So I'm trying to deal all my one-year guys had to get something back. The only guy I will keep is Jesse Winker, who I can re-sign. So hit me up on Twitter at Duck Millard, or just chime in on the comment sections on, whether it's you're watching on YouTube or whatever it is you might be watching. Just drop your comments in there. And let me know who you might be trying to trade at this trade deadline, or who you might be trying to maybe acquire as far as prospects if you are one of those teams like me that is in the rebuild stage. All right, this has less to do about fantasy baseball and more to do about kind of Ray Kinsella's fantasy. And I'm talking about the Field of Dreams game. This is so cool. The book Shoeless Joe is my favorite baseball book. The movie Field of Dreams, my favorite baseball movie. I think Bull Durham is probably the most realistic baseball movie that's out there, but Field of Dreams is awesome. And I can't wait for this game tonight. It was supposed to happen last year, but with the pandemic, it was canceled. But we will get to see a ball game in a cornfield in Iowa tonight. I can't wait to see the White Sox. Fitting, as that was who the team was in the book and the movie that was playing on the cornfield. It was the 8 guys who were banned from baseball after the 1919 World Series where they threw it. And then the Yankees. I hope they come out like ghosts in the movie. I will watch every second of this coverage. I cannot wait. It looks so cool. The lights are going to be up. There's going to be so much pomp and nostalgia and all that stuff, and I'll drink it all. Like, just inject that into my veins tonight. That's what I want. I just love baseball and the history, and I don't care that baseball over celebrates or has too many stats. I love all of it. I don't agree with all of it, but I love the entire mystique and aura around baseball, and this is just another cool thing. So the Field of Dreams game tonight, I think that is really, really cool, and honestly, I cannot wait for that one. All right, how about Eloy Jimenez back with 2 bangs? The White Sox left fielder up until Sunday had only 27 at-bats, but in his first 4 from coming back, he had 2 home runs, 5 RBIs. In his next 4, he had 2 home runs and 5 RBIs. What a bust out, and what timing for the fantasy playoff stretch drive. I mean, this is the type of guy coming back that is basically like a trade for fantasy teams where you didn't have to give anything up in return. If you've been patient and you've been waiting for him to come back and you're in a contending position, this is massive. You didn't have to go out and give up a bunch of prospects to get a guy who is mashing. And if you're rebuilding and you're waiting until your trade deadline, or you've waited, your price just went up. You should be very happy. Also, if you are proactive and you're watching the injury, because listen, a lot of guys as fantasy GMs in a lot of leagues, this is how they find out their player is back from injury. Oh, the little notification says he's off the IL or he's coming back. Oh, okay. Well, I guess I didn't need to go out and trade for that left fielder that I just traded for. If you're watching the injuries and you're paying attention, you take fantasy serious. First of all, I want you in the Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball, but you would know that this was the time he was coming back. And I always say you wait a little bit before a guy comes back. Sometimes guys come back from injuries and they're really slow. George Springer, heating up now. But other times they come back right away. So if you were patient with Jimenez, you're being rewarded right now. And listen, I can't really blame anybody for not being particularly patient and maybe trading him or something like that. But if you were, you're being rewarded. How about this story? Fernando Tatis to the outfield. He's back on the IL with a shoulder injury. Could come back this weekend. It's being reported that he will have off-season surgery on the shoulder. Meanwhile, the Padres are looking at using him when he comes back in the outfield, depending on how strong his shoulder is when he returns. They're going to, basically it's going to be like the final minute decision, the definition of a game time decision, because they'll give him grounders and also, make sure he's fielding the ball in left field. Man, when he's healthy, he's been terrific, but he's missed almost 30 games this year. And you know what? That's not a lot, but I'm guessing there's going to be more down the stretch as they're going to want to rest him a little bit for the playoffs. So when you're talking about superstars that you want to acquire, you have to keep this in mind. We've seen it in the NBA, that load management, and it's frustrating because that cost me a playoff spot. Kawhi Leonard, when in our postseason of our basketball league that I was in, was like, load management, wasn't playing in the playoff week. And so you have to look at that when you are looking to acquire or draft or whatever superstars. Case in point, Clayton Kershaw. Dodgers ace, now been moved to the 60-day DL, meaning he's not eligible to return until September 5th. This is not a huge setback or surprise for the Dodgers. It gives them some options, but it does impact fantasy owners because there were some who were hoping he would be back by the first of the month when playoffs could be starting in your league. So, again, if you're in the UFLB, you go right to the end of the season. So you would have time for Clayton Kershaw to return and then help your team get to the playoffs. But I don't know. It could be longer as well. It's a forearm injury, has to heal properly. They're obviously looking towards the playoffs. Yeah, they're in a competitive division. but they at the very least are in a wild card spot right now. They would have to play the Padres in that wild card spot. By no means is it a given, but sure, they want to get to that first overall and try to catch the Giants, who I still think are going to come back to earth at some point. But they do have Max Scherzer to lean on. I would not be counting on Trevor Bauer coming back this year as a Dodger. Maybe not ever, depending on what happens out of that sexual assault investigation. But David Price could become a decent spot starter or streamer for you down the stretch. So just keep that in mind. David Price could be a guy that you see worked into the Dodger rotation a little bit more, and he is probably available as a waiver wire, or at the very least, you could probably trade for him. And it depends how savvy the GM or owner of that team is when it comes to what's happening with the Dodger roster. So that's the other thing. When you have a guy on your roster like a Clayton Kershaw, you need to check what else. Who's taking his spot? What is happening? If you're just waiting for your guy to return, you are going to be waiting to win a long time. So that's the headlines that we went with this week. Fantasy League trade deadlines, the Field of Dreams game tonight. Jimenez back with 2 bangs, 10 RBIs, Tatis to the outfield, and Kershaw to the 60-day DL. All right, how do you spell relief? This is going to replace the best of bullpens, and it's going to be different tidbits about relievers and different teams. And what I'm going with here is 12 teams are going the CBC route. Closer by committee. Not by choice for some. Some are choosing to do that. Some are others by injuries. But you look at these teams. There's some pretty good teams that are going closer by committee. Some of them, again, by injuries. But you got the Rays, Giants, Mariners, Pirates, Yankees, Brewers, Royals, Tigers, White Sox, Reds, Cubs, and Orioles, all using a committee. So, unless you have a few guys on that team, like if you have a few of the Rays guys, you're probably okay. They're a very good team. Things like that. Other teams are doing it because of injuries, and it will get back to it. But, I guess it's a good time to pick up a stream of some of those guys that are filling in. Speaking of that, if you have Tyler Clippard of the D-backs or Daniel Bard of the Rockies as one of your closers, first of all, sorry about your luck. Secondly, those are 2 guys that are in jeopardy of losing their jobs. Carlos Estevez could replace Bard in the Rockies, while Sean Poppin could get the call in the desert. Dylan Florio, another guy in the swamp whose job isn't great. The Marlins could go with Anthony Bender or Anthony Bass as other 9th inning options. So just things to keep in mind. The worst thing is you get past your trade deadline and find out your closer is no longer the closer. So always good to have some other options just in case, as well as injuries that come up, as we showed you. Some of these teams having to get by with the CBC method because of some of those injuries. So certainly something to be aware of when it comes to closers. All right, we're going to get to Baseball Thunderdome, Blue Jay edition, and waiver wire wins when we return.
This is Full Count Fantasy Baseball.
Don't try to strike everybody out. Strikeouts are boring. Besides that, they're fascist.
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports.
Throw some ground ball. More democratic.
Get in the game, where you own the game.
Full Count Fantasy Baseball is part of the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, your one-stop fantasy sports shop. We are building something all fantasy fans will love, and we're looking for quality programming to join us. Reach out if you're interested in being part of the rotation, whether you have a daily, weekly, or even monthly show. If it's about fantasy, we'd love to chat. Follow at UFS Network for more information, or you can email ufsn@uffsports.com for more information how you can own the game, even when it comes to a fantasy sports podcast. So much fun stuff going on in the UFFS platform and the world, and of course, that includes Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. Looking for definitely franchise owners. We're looking for scouts. We have so much on the go as well. But right now, looking for your opinion.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome!
You be cocky and arrogant, even when you're getting beat.
2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
Prediction? Yes, prediction.
And right now, I've got 2 men.
It's serious.
It is serious. So this is where you come in, the viewer. I want to know who you would take in a baseball Thunderdome showdown between these two players when it comes to fantasy sports. Now, chime in at Duck Millard or in any of the comment sections that you can find wherever you're listening. Would love to hear from you. And let me know what you think and who you would think or you would take fantasy purposes between these two players. We did the Expos last week. How could we not do the Blue Jays this week? Fantasy purposes, only factoring in their time with the Blue Jays. Who you got? George Bell or Joe Carter? Yes, Joe Carter hit the most famous home run in Blue Jays history. Apologies to bat flip fans. It wasn't as big as winning a World Series. So Joe Carter, 203 home runs as a Blue Jay. Hit 736 runs batted in, did Joe Carter, as a Blue Jay. He also stole 78 bases. That's pretty important in the overall scheme of things. Hit 257, OPS of 781. That's Joe Carter. Now how about gorgeous George Bell? 9 years with the Blue Jays, 202 home runs, 740 RBIs, stole 59 bases, so he had a higher OPS of 811 and a higher batting average of 286. So you kind of want to separate. He was also an MVP in 1987, where he hit 47 home runs and 134 RBIs, led the league. He was in the MVP vote 4 other times with the Blue Jays. Joe Carter, who came to the Blue Jays later in his career, and it's what they needed, but he was in the MVP conversation 4 times in his Blue Jay season. So, who you got? Baseball Thunderdome, Blue Jay edition, because we fly our flag north of the 49th. George Bell versus Joe Carter. Chime in wherever you want. I will try to get back and join the conversation. But Baseball Thunderdome today is all about the Blue Jays. Waiver wire wins is coming up, but Bell or Carter in Baseball Thunderdome. All right, as for waiver wire wins, this is what I'm going with today. Kyle Finnegan. He's the Nationals reliever, and we just talked about in How Do You Spell Relief about closers and some guys that are losing their jobs and different things. Well, the Nationals made some many changes, and he is the new closer, and he's doing a darn good job. Look at these numbers. 3 saves, a win, and 2 holds, 5 strikeouts, 0 earned runs. Now, those numbers are over his last 7 appearances. He's the new closer. He shut it down in 3 of the last 4. The Nats they're going to go with this as long as they can and see what's happened and see what happens with him. And he's available in my CBS league. If I had some free agent dollars left, I would grab him and trade him right before our deadline. As for the most added and dropped players of the week, Brandon Lowe was added the most, followed closely by Clayton Kershaw as fantasy owners and GMs hoping he will be back soon. I don't know why you would have dropped Clayton Kershaw unless you're in like a 5-team league or something like that. And Blake Snell. Well, Aaron Nola was dropped the most with Kevin Gausman of the Giants right behind him. So some interesting waiver wire notes. And, you're not going to win a fantasy league by just plucking from the waiver wire. You still have to have, decent draft picks and good draft. You can get by on the waiver wire, and you can every once in a while find that real stud diamond, but you're mostly getting guys that are going to be back-end starters, maybe not everyday players all the time, or a guy who's filling in relief. But still important to try to win the waiver wire, because you can add to your team to win your league in that particular situation. So that is waiver wire wins. Check out Kyle Finnegan. He may be available in your league. We're going to get to Prospect Peak and how you can make your league a lot better in Rule Your League right after this.
This is Full Count Fantasy Baseball.
Say hey, Willie Mays Hayes here. Play like Mays, and I run like Hayes.
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports.
Well, you may run like Mays, but you hit like shit.
Get in the game where you own the game.
Every time I see you hit one in the air, you owe me 20 push-ups.
Full Count Fantasy Baseball is presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. It is the most realistic fantasy platform around. We have full seasons, as I mentioned. We have a playoff draft, as I mentioned. We have playoff series, as I mentioned. We also have a scouting program. Yes, you are scouting real-world players and then selling them in auctions or direct sale to fantasy franchises. They aren't just fantasy players as well. There'll be digital athlete NFTs on the Zilliqa blockchain that you can bid on. There's so much going on. I cannot wait to share it with you more and more as we grow. Baseball auctions November 5th to 7th with UFFS. You own the game, so get in the game. Check it out at www.uffsports.com. And we will only have as many teams as the league we're basing it on. So Major League Baseball, the UFLB has 30 teams. The UFLB will have 30 teams. So it's a rare opportunity to get in. Otherwise, you're going to be having to buy from an owner, and that is a lot more difficult. So get in on the ground floor. As mentioned, franchise auctions November 5th to 7th. All right, let's get to Prospect Peak now, and we take a look at the future of the Seattle Mariners. A lot of guys from Wander Franco to Alek Manoah to Jared Kelenic have moved off a lot of people's top prospect lists because they're playing in Major League Baseball. But another guy on the Mariners prospect list is ready to take that mantle. A lot of people you will find have Julio Rodriguez of the Mariners on their number one spot when it comes to top prospects, and it's not hard to see why. In AA and AAA this season, he has 9 home runs, 30 RBIs, hitting .311, swiped 7 bags, and a .967 OPS. And that's in 42 games in AA and single A rather. Oh yeah, he also helped the Dominican Republic win a bronze medal at the Tokyo Olympics. So this guy is a rising star. I highly doubt if you have any kind of prospect system in your league that he will be available. But if you're allowed to pick up prospects and you guys don't draft them, and you have room to stash a guy on your roster and wait, you might have to wait until this time next year, maybe earlier, then go after Julio Rodriguez. I think that the Mariners are probably going to be a little bit patient with him, but I could see him halfway through next season, as long as he progresses, getting called up. Who knows? Maybe it's earlier. I'm not sure, but Julio Rodriguez is the prospect peak that we're looking at this week.
Smokey, this is not Nam. This is bowling. There are rules.
I don't think it taints it.
What you talking about, mister?
You're crazy. I like you, but you're crazy.
All right, it is time for Rule Your League. And the rule, and in this sort of segment, it's suggestions that can make your league better. Rules that I've used in different leagues or I've heard about, or a rule for you on, just how to live fantasy and things that, different things that me and other people that I've learned over the years consistently do. But in this particular segment, it's free agent money to spend that you should have in your league. Now, in the Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball, you will actually have to pay score coins for your transactions, or there might be some bat coins and things like that, but you will have to physically pay a fee for each transaction. That's how the prize pool builds up. But in a lot of leagues where it's not as high stakes as ours, because there isn't one that's as high stakes as ours or as realistic, you just get like an amount of free agent money. So like $100, that's what you get to spend. And you have to bid on a free agent. It's basically a blind bidding. But a limited amount and no zero bids. It has to be at least $1 or whatever your numbers you're using, your valuations. Once you run out, like I did this year, you're out. You cannot pick up any more guys in fantasy. My team suffered so many injuries, and I mismanaged because I was picking up young guys because I was not very good, and now Clayton Kershaw has been starting for me while he's on the 60-day DL. So also another rule that I would implement if you don't is to keep your waiver wire open during the playoffs. Now, you can only get that guy for that playoffs or even past the trade deadline. But even past the trade deadline, what we do in some other leagues is, you can pick guys up, but we're in a contract league, so you only get them for the rest of the season. Then they go back into the free agency pool after that. So I would also keep the waiver wire open after the playoffs start, but you can only pick up guys for that postseason. So, you're not going to be able to keep guys past that for that very reason, because they're just basically a playoff pickup. But something I would keep up for sure. Okay, weekend watch. I'm going with the Mets and Dodgers. I don't think the Dodgers have to worry about the Mets in the wild card race, but they can really forget about them. Forget about them. They can forget about them, those Mets. The Dodgers, can forget about those Mets if they sweep or even win 2 out of 3. So stay tuned for the pitching matchups of that one. The Dodgers rotation is a bit of a mess, and it'd be great if we could somehow see a Scherzer DeGrom, but I don't think DeGrom is anywhere close to being back. So we're not going to miraculously see him come out of the tunnel like ghosts out of the cornfield tonight. So that's what I'm going to be watching this week. But so much to this weekend. Tonight, of course, I'm going to be watching the cornfield game. That's going to be so amazing. I love it. All right, Full Count Fantasy Baseball is part of the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. UFSN is your one-stop fantasy sports shop. Follow UFS Network on Twitter or email them ufsn@uffsports.com. And, of course, UFFS is the title sponsor of this show. Check out www.uffsports.com. You can join up as a fan. And then you could become a scout if you want to. You could try to work your way into one of the organizations that are out there. Hockey teams, several of them are always looking for assistant GMs, etc. You could try to buy one of those teams, or you can check out some of the other sports that we will have going. We just announced this week in the UFLB that the top 6 bidders will get the chance to name the division and pick the division that they will play in, with the stipulation that it is named after a current Hall of Famer. A member of Cooperstown is the only stipulation. So much cool stuff still to come about all of this, and you can watch it all unfold at UFSN. There is the YouTube channel. Just find it on YouTube. Check out all our past shows, and these are the shows that we have each week. Every second Sunday, actually, is the UFFS podcast. And then you have 2 Minute Tuesday with Darren Bates. Darren Bates and Larry Fisher handle the UFFS official podcast, Tracking the Draft with myself and Craig Button. That's actually ended for the season, but we usually do that on Wednesdays. We will have a very cool football show to replace that in the coming weeks. This show, Full Count Fantasy Baseball, live on UFSN, Thursdays, noon Eastern. UFHL Now will come your way tomorrow. Myself and Larry Fisher each week, and the Ultimate Roundtable usually once a month on Saturdays. I think we're going to actually take August off because so many people are still on holidays, and we'll resume that one in September. All right, this has been a fun show, and I want to thank Jordan Blundell for being a part of this show for as long as he could, but they have some really big things going on there. They're building a stadium. We have our baseball day in Canada. Check out the Western Canadian Baseball League website for more details on that, and the Edmonton prospects as well. But yeah, Jordan was fun. It was fun while it lasted, but he's just a little bit too busy to be able to continue with the show. So one last piece of advice for all you fantasy GMs out there.
You be cocky and arrogant, even when you're getting beat.
And one more thing to say before we say goodbye, and that is ban the shift. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a great weekend in baseball.